Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Roger Gravitt. I'm the London area organiser, along with Alex Wilson, of this wonderful Reform UK. Thank you all for coming. Welcome here. Thanks to the church for hiring their facility to us, unlike Bolton Football Club. But it's really good to see there's people, a lot of people, in fact, that I don't know, that are not maybe party regulars, certainly in my part of London. So it's really good to have all of you here. I hope you're here interested enough to actually support Reform, to maybe even stand for Reform UK at the council elections coming up and beyond. Now, Reform has only been going, as you know, for a few months. This is, as far as I know, the first public type meeting of candidates and public anywhere in the UK in the Reform areas. So this has really been a start off for us. For those of us that met at Westminster, we had a speech from Richard, the leader, on College Green this morning. We've had a journey on the bus, the Reform bus, and we've had lunch in Greenwich, and we've come down now to join up with you guys here. We've got a variety of short speakers for you tonight, and we'll have a Q&A session afterwards. Our star guest tonight, for those that don't know, Dr. David Ball, here on the right. Now, you know it's hard the last 2 years to get an appointment with your GP. If you've got any little issues that you'd like to just see him afterwards, okay? All right, so enough ramble from me. I'm going to introduce our first speaker today. And what's unusual about Matt is his age. And I think as soon as you see him, you'll understand what I mean. Unlike me, he wasn't here in 1950. He probably wasn't here in 2000 either, actually. But anyway, Matt Stevens.
Hi, everybody. Great to see such a big turnout. I mean, I've been involved with all the by-elections we've had, and this is by far the best turnout we've had. It's excellent to see so many new faces. What's really important as we build a new brand is we get our name out there. That's the really important thing, and that's what these local council elections do. Because even if you're just a paper candidate, which obviously we need, Roger's been saying, get your mates to apply to be a candidate. Because it's just about people seeing the Reform name, getting the brand out there, and that's what's really important. And the last by-elections over the last year and a bit since we've existed, the really big thing and the real positive to take is that in 2 of the last 3 by-elections, we've beaten the Greens and the Lib Dems, which has shown people ahead of the general election, which is in about 2 years' time, the political system in this country is now 5 parties. It's no longer the 2-party state, the 3 parties or the 4 parties. We're now part of the big 5 parties in the political system, which is really important to show people there are, an alternative in British politics. What's really important, as I say, today and beyond, is to get our message out there in the local area and nationally, to show people what the Tories are doing, their failures, their largest waiting list we've seen in our lifetimes, highest energy bills, highest taxes since World War II. We need to get that message out there and show people, there is an alternative. As a young person, being involved has been a real privilege and honour for me, and I've met more young people than I thought I would along the trail. So it's been really important for me to get out there as a young person, and people are really, really interested in listening to you when you get your message out there. So, it's really important. Thank you all for coming today. It's really good to help get the brand out. Excellent to see so many new faces. Thank you all for coming, and hopefully we can have a great lineup of speeches, Roger.
Okay, thank you, Matt. All right, an important thing about a new party forming in this country, it takes time. We've got a bit of time. We've got 2 years. May elections are very quick. They're on us before we know where we are. But we're still going to put as many candidates out as we can get, and as many of you as we can persuade tonight to sign up, okay? Now, what's important about the 3-4 by-elections that we have fought since we formed Reform UK is that, as you mentioned, we beat the Lib Dems, we beat the Greens twice. But even more important than that is that we crushed 3 other similar-minded parties in those elections. Now, we know the percentages were low, but they were important percentages. Reclaim, 99 votes. UKIP, 100 votes, yeah? And Heritage, 100 votes, roughly around those figures in consecutive by-elections, okay? Now, that is convincing people who are like-minded that are supporting those parties at the moment that hang on a minute, we're really doing this and we're picking up 90 votes. And UKIP been around 25 years of picking up 100 votes. Now they've got funding, they've got backers that we want to attract, they've got supporters that we want to attract, and they've got activists that we want to attract. What we've gone on to is a party that is going to put out 600 candidates at the next election, that is going to work for the next 2 years up to that election, and then for the next 10 years beyond that. Richard's vision is way, way above Fox and Curt and then UKIP, okay? So I'm really pleased that you guys have obviously got an interest. I want that interest to develop into more than that. Enough of that. My next speaker tonight, and you might have to put your hearing aids up a notch, is a lady that stood in a recent by-election for Reform UK, Kirsty Walmsley.
So, hello everybody. No, thank you very much, Roger, and thank you. I'm not sure if it's switched on actually, or am I quiet?
You don't have to, it's going straight to the video.
Oh, that's fine, okay. Great to see such a brilliant crowd here today, and thank you to Roger and Mark for organising this, which is totally awesome. So, some of you will already know me as the National Candidate Coordinator, but I'm also Kirsty, the mum of 2 children and wife. So I understand the pressures of being a candidate and trying to manage home life and other things as well. But today I've been asked to speak to you about my experience as a by-election candidate in North Shropshire. So where do I start? First of all, I was completely shocked that North Shropshire was thrown into a by-election. As many of you will already be aware, one of the safest Conservative seats in the country. And up until this point, the Conservative MP there had seemed to have, not done anything too controversial. So the by-election came around, and it was such an excellent opportunity to put across what Reform UK is about and what was really important to me. I was a really strong local candidate, so I was born and brought up in North Shropshire. North Shropshire is made up of lots of different towns, and I had connections with most of them. So I was really proud to be able to stand there. I'm talking to you today as Kirsty the candidate, because Kirsty the the candidate coordinator wouldn't have been very happy with Kirsty the candidate, because I'm always telling candidates, when you knock on doors and you're canvassing, don't talk for more than 2 minutes. So what's it like standing as a by-election candidate? It's completely and utterly different to standing as a council candidate. I'd previously stood as a council candidate when I was 21, but that was a very laid-back experience. It was me going out in the evenings and the weekends knocking on doors. I remember organising to go and meet with the press in a local pub in the middle of nowhere. Any of you that came to help in my by-election will know that Wem is the middle of nowhere. And I walked in to meet with one media outlet, and while I was in there, 4 others just managed to call in. So I spent the rest of the afternoon in the pub, but not for the reasons I would like. It was a really interesting campaign, and I think we did some things really, really well. So we were really quick to put our candidate in place. We got our message out first, and we set the agenda all the way through the North Shropshire by-election. The main issue was that the candidate the Conservative Party had picked was not a local candidate. Depending on the area you're standing in, slightly less important, but in a rural community like North Shropshire, it was really, really important. And when I was announced as a candidate, I basically set the agenda, said this is why I'm standing, because I think North Shropshire deserves a local candidate. And that rhetoric stayed right through the election. So that's a big bit of advice I would give. If you can get your message across first and strongest, it will stick. We also, many of you will have seen our reform policy booklets. That was really, really well received on the doorstep, which was amazing. And also, I got invited to the BBC hustings along with the other main political parties, but none of the fringe parties were invited. And the BBC said to our chief executive, the reason for that is because when they were talking to people on the street and they were asking who are you going to vote for, unprompted, they were saying me. You need to be there for the 2 years running up to your general election campaign, and you need to build a base, and you need to be in people's minds, and you need to have that brand recognition before the election comes around. So just to close up, if you consider being a by-election candidate, it can be really good fun. You're making memories, you're adding to your life story, but more importantly, you're really adding to the political cause. You're standing up for what you believe in, and you're doing it for all the right reasons, and that's what I love about Reform UK. But lastly, as a word of warning, please, please don't put on your literature that you'll give them free beer. That is now illegal.
Thank you, Kirsty. And she said she had nothing to say before the meeting. Okay, we've got a couple of local lads now that are sort of standing for you guys that are local. And the first one to come up to the stage is Tom, who's going to say a few words. Okay, Tom Bright.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Tom. I stood back in 2019 originally for the Brexit Party in Erith and Thamesmead. And I thought at the time Brexit was done, let's all move on. And then of course, as time has kind of progressed, I feel that, the Tory party haven't really delivered on their promises. I thought it was great at the time when I saw the exit poll and, the great big majority that Boris had got. But, it meant that Jeremy Corbyn was kind of pushed to the side, and we didn't have that kind of militant Labour Party that we were looking at potentially being in government. But now I realise that actually, there's something wrong with our politics, and there's something wrong with the two-party system going backwards and forwards between the Tories and the Labour Party. And especially in Greenwich, I discovered that, a lot of local issues that people were talking about during the general election, not just about Brexit, just weren't really being addressed. And I know there's a lot of local people here. I don't know if you could just raise your hand if you're from Greenwich. Excellent. Yeah, brilliant. Okay. There are a lot of problems, I feel, in Greenwich. And, I think this is a really good opportunity to actually pressure the Labour Party in Greenwich Council and the Labour leadership, and to say to them, we're not any longer going to tolerate, residents being taken for granted. They've raised our council tax. They have, we're looking at an increase with the government as well of national insurance. I think it's time that we demanded from our politicians an explanation, and we actually pressured them and said to them, we're not going to just sit back any longer and just essentially let them, take us for granted. So some of the local issues that I've noticed that people are talking about are really basic things that I just don't feel that the Labour Party are addressing here in Greenwich. I bang on about bin collections, but it is really important, isn't it, that our bins are collected on time, and that we know that those basic services that we pay so much for are being fulfilled, and those services are being provided. It took the bus, we were a little bit late, so apologies for that, but the reason for that, I put it down to, the cycle lanes. And the fact that we were stuck in traffic, and we were along Woolwich Road, we were, basically in one single lane, and yet there's another lane devoted entirely to bicycles, and you don't even see one cyclist coming down any of those lanes. So I think there's a real disconnect between politicians and what they are doing, and what people are actually, what they want and what local people are feeling. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. And so that's why I'm kind of putting myself forward and standing as a local candidate in Eltham, well, it's now called Eltham Town and Avery Hill. I don't know, there might be some residents from that area. I'm not somebody who, I don't consider myself to be a politician. I don't consider myself to be somebody really who is probably, somebody who is confident really in standing or even wants to get involved in politics. But I do, it's probably not the best thing to say, but but as Kirsty was saying, you know, I think it's about time that just ordinary people stood up and started making the case that, you know, we're not gonna just sit back and let politicians make these decisions that aren't in the interests of local people. And so, you know, I really hope that if you're somebody who can be a candidate, or if you're just somebody who can go out and support, that you get in touch with us if you haven't already, and that you feel, you know, that you can put your faith in the Reform Party so that we can move forward and we can try and pressure politicians to make the right decisions and to make sure and to hold them accountable, make sure that their actions actually match the words. So thank you very much for listening.
Cheers, thank you, Tom. Some of what Tom said there, we've got currently, although it's a lot quieter than when it was with Corbyn, we've got probably the worst Labour Party we've seen in decades, in lifetime even. We've got one of the most unpopular Tory parties in my lifetime, and that's a long lifetime. So it's a perfect storm now to break this system, this two-party that was almost, until a few months ago, a one-party system. It's a perfect time to break that and offer an alternative to the electorate. We will come through as a middle-of-the-road party. We've already shown, albeit in a small way, that we can beat Lib Dems and Greens, and the other three I'm not even going to waste my breath on again. They're not even political parties. So we're already into that fourth place situation, really, and pushing on third. And we've had limited exposure. We've already had, and it's limited, but it's success because we have gone above those parties. We've beaten the Lib Dems and Greens, as I've said several times. So if we get more and more interest, and we can only do that by getting our name on the ballot papers, that's not what our first challenge is. Our first challenge is to get our brand across, to get people to know, Reform UK, who are they? Right? We heard it over the last few months in various by-elections. So we've got to get that message out. Richard can do it on TV and radio in various ways. We can get leaflets out there. Most importantly, when elections come round, we're on ballot papers. They see the logo. They get a candidate. They can ask questions. And local elections are good because there's a lot more face-to-face contact if you actually do go round. And a council seat is much easier to run a campaign because it's all local to where you live. You pick your ward, you've got friends, you've got family, you've got neighbours, you've got people you know already, and it's only a few blocks. You can even leaflet your whole seat in a couple of evenings. So it's something that we need hundreds and hundreds of people nationwide to get out there and do. That's the only way, really, we're going to get enough coverage for the media to take interest. And if the media get hold of us, Nigel used to say any advertising is good advertising. It's not quite like that, but I get the gist of what he meant. We've got to sell ourselves. We've got to introduce ourselves in any way possible to get support. The people, I believe, have shown over the last 10 years that if you offer them the right thing, they are prepared to change away from their politics of, oh, granddad was Labour, his dad was Labour, and his dad was Tory, and so on. They will change. They changed for the European elections twice. They changed in the referendum. They will change if you give them a solid alternative, right? But that, starting from scratch, needs a lot of hard work on the ground. And that means you, all of you, and people you know. So you get my drift anyway. Please consider it. Please talk to other people. If you think there's something out of this today, talk to other people. It's the only way we can get to sell. We will be opening up, as you've probably seen in past elections, street stalls on the high streets and outside stations over the next few months. Richard will be getting more and more, and David, on TV and radio and get out there. But we really need people on the street doing the hard work. When it comes to elections, knocking on doors and talking to people. Okay, our last mini speaker tonight is again local, and he's in charge of this whole area, is Mark Simpson.
Yeah, thanks very much, Roger. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Probably a lot of you have got to know my name because I've probably been sending you lots of emails recently. So thank you all for coming. It really is good to get people together. As Roger said, this is kind of the first time that we've done an event like this. So it is, good to see that, we have, real interest in what we're trying to achieve. So yes, obviously, I'm here. I'm being given responsibility for organising reform in Greenwich. And, one of the things that kind of stands out to me about Greenwich is Labour has been in control of Greenwich since 1971. Now, I didn't know that until I prepared for this speech. But anyway, since 1971, Greenwich have been ruled by Labour. Now, if you go out in the street and you ask people, how are things for you? How do you feel? Do you feel like the council is giving you value? Most people will say no. Yet, most people will still continue to vote in the same way. And that's not because they're especially tied to Labour. It's not especially because they agree with Labour. It's a habit. And this is something that I found last year when I stood in the London Assembly elections. People don't have any real affiliation with Labour, especially not Sadiq Khan. Definitely not Sadiq Khan, but people do vote Labour. And that's not through anything that Labour do, it's a habit. So, here we are in Eltham today, and I think the message that I want to really give is things can be different. Before we were Reform as the Brexit Party, the Brexit Party actually won. If you measure it by constituency, the Brexit Party won in Eltham. So it shows that people are willing to vote differently. People's habits can be changed. People just need, a little bit of a nudge. People just need to know that there is an alternative. And that's where I think reform is. We're sensible, common sense. That's where I see reform being. Giving people an alternative. For too long, 1971. And in that time, Greenwich, now we have the highest murder rate in the whole of London. Greenwich is the murder rate. And if you ask people, what's your main concern? Most people will say, I want to feel safe. I think that's going back to our, most primitive instinct. People want to feel safe. But Greenwich is the opposite of that. So I think it's important that reform is here. We're a voice for sensible, common sense policies. And, we can change things. We're getting organised. The fact that we're doing this is testament to, what we're going to achieve. The more we organise, the more we speak to people, the more we get out knocking on doors, we're only going to keep on growing. Our voice is only going to become larger. So what I would, encourage and really urge you all to do, really repeating what Roger said, is what we really need is candidates. What we need is people to come forward and stand. Because the most frustrating thing is, meeting people after the election and saying, I would have loved to have voted for you, but there was no candidate. I mean, that to me is, just... we have people. We just need our people that believe in what we're trying to achieve just to step forward. And it doesn't have to take long. At the bare minimum, all we need is 10 signatures of people. So it doesn't have to be, a long, cumbersome process. But every name on the ballot paper is another name and another voice for change and common sense. So yes, thank you very much. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Mark.